And now let's move on to our plots section. Right now it is literally very much blank, and now let me show you the outline, how we are going to style our plots page. So here the outline would look like, firstly we will have 5 beta expander rows. So now before going to the next process of our outline, let's type the following codes for our beta expander now. So let's go to our text editor. Here let's erase our pass, and now let's create the beta expanders. Actually we are going to have 5 beta expanders in total. So this is the first one, the second one, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And now the first beta expander is based on our column target. So let's name it based on column target. And the second one is based on the frequency distribution plots. Frequency distribution plots. And the third one would be our scatter plots. So scatter plots. And the fourth one is for outlier detection. Outlier detection. And lastly our fifth one is for the heat maps and pair plots. So heat maps and pair plots. And let's save this, and let's look at how our web app now looks like. So let's click on always rerun, and here we got our 5 different beta expanders with nothing inside it. And now let's move on. So inside our beta expanders, I'm going to have a select box. So we are not only gonna plot a single plot inside every beta expander, rather we are going to use a select box and give multiple options to the user. Here now I have added the with and the pass statements over here. And now let's work on the beta expander, which is based on our column target. So now let's create a select box. So let's take a variable named the choose, and inside which st.select box, and inside which I will ask the user to choose the plot you want to view, and then I will give him the following choices. So here basically inside our column target, I'm going to give the user to view 4 plots. So firstly the target, and which will look like actually a count plot, and then the target with respect to our column 6, and then the target with respect to the fasting blood sugar. So it will be very longer, and now let's bring it down. So fasting blood sugar, and also target with respect to our exercise induced angina. So exercise, and now we are good to go. So firstly let's choose the values. Let's take a if statement, and firstly we are gonna plot the plot for our target. So if choose equals target, and in that case I am going to plot a count plot. So all the plots that we are going to create would be basically mostly based on plotly, and some part would be of our seaborn. So let's import both of them. So import plotly express plotly dot express as px, and finally I will import cbond as sns. And now over here, let's take a variable named the a for our plot, and inside which px dot I will use a histogram, so histogram, and in which I will call my data frame dt, that is the renamed data frame, and my variable x, that is on the x-axis, it would be my column target. And let's display this particular plot inside our Streamlit. So st.plotly chart, and in which I will pass my variable a. Now let's save this and let's open our based on column beta expander, and here we got our select box, and when I chose target I will get this particular plot. And let's click on the target based on sex, but now it is still empty, and here in target we got both of them as the blue color. So now let's change this, so let's set the color also to be our column target, and let's save this. And now here we got two different plots, and here we have their labels too. And let's move on to creating the second plot. So elif choose equals my target with respect to sex, so target with respect to my column sex. So actually this would be a grouped plot, so let's take a variable b, and inside which px dot histogram, and I will call my data frame dt, and in which my value x would be my column target, and the color now will be my color will be now my column sex. And let me show you how this particularly look like. So st.plotly chart, and in which let's pass b. Let's save it, and when you open target with respect to sex, and now here now it is like a stacked one, but right now we don't need a stacked plot, we need a grouped plot. And in order to do that, let's use the parameter bar mode and let's change to group. Let's save it, and now here we got a cool grouped plot. And now let's move on to target with respect to fasting blood sugar. So again let's use a elif statement, so elif choose equals target with respect to my fasting blood sugar, and let's take a variable c, and again px dot histogram, and this would be a stacked plot, so dt, and I will print my x to be the target, and the color would be based on my column fasting blood sugar. So let's take the parameter color and let's change to fasting blood sugar. Oops, the column would be in small case, so fasting blood sugar. And now let's display this, so st.plotly chart, and in which I will pass the variable c, and here we got a stacked plot. And lastly we will use our target with respect to exercise induced angina, and it would be similar to our target with respect to sex plot. So elif choose target with respect to my column exercise induced angina, so exercise induced, and here I'm going to basically plot this same plot. So let's copy this, and here let's paste it. Now let's change the variables to d, and here my color would be based on the column exercise underscore induced underscore and Gina. Let's save this and let's move on to our fourth area, and here we got its particular count plot. And right now, the based on column target, this beta expander is now got completed. And now let's move on to frequency distribution plots. And now let's erase this pass over here and let's create a select box. So let's name it as choose again, and in which st dot select box, and inside which I will name the same. So choose the plot you wanna view. So let's copy this and paste it over here, and here I'm going to give the user some more options. They are the plots based on chest pain type and the plots based on the maximum heart rate achieved. And now let's bring this down, and lastly the third plot would be based on the column age. So let's create an if statement now. So if the value chosen by the user is equals my option based on the chest pain type, and in this case I will create a new variable e, and in which I will create a pie chart. So px.py, and inside which I will call my data frame dt, and in which the names are equal to the column chest pain type. And now let's plot this inside our Streamlit. So st.plotly chart, and inside which I will pass the variable e. And now let's save it and let's go to our web app. Oops, I guess there is an error over here. So oops, here we used the extra value these. Now let's save it, and here we got our cold plot. And now let's move on to the next plot. So elif, and inside which let's choose the value based on maximum heart rate achieved. So let's paste it over here, and inside which here we are going to use our seaborn to plot a KDE plot, so for kernel density estimator plot. And let's take two new variables, let's say f and ax, and inside which plt dot subplots. It is the plt for matplotlib. I think we did not import it. Yeah, now let's import it. So import matplotlib dot pyplot as plt, and it's import. Now let's save it, and let's increase the figure size. So fig size equals, let's change it to 10,8. And now let's take our variable ax, and inside which I will plot a distribution plot. So sns.distplot, and inside which I will take my column maximum heart rate achieved, that is max, oops, inside the quotes, maximum heart rate, oops, rate achieved, and I will create 10 bins out of it. And lastly I will plot this particular plot inside our Streamlit. So st.pyplot, and inside which I will pass my variable f. So let's save this, and when we go to our maximum heart rate achieved area, here we got our kernel density estimator plot. And lastly let's create our third plot. So elif, and it would be also a kernel density estimator plot. So choose equals, let's copy this based on the age, and here let's paste it. And now again we have to create these stuff. So let's copy this again and paste it over here. So here let's change it to G, and over here too, and here our column is age, so change to age column. And now let's save it. And when we move on to our third part, and here we got a different plot. So both of them are in the same color, so let's change the color to be red. Yeah, now it is pretty much cool. So the expander, beta expander for our frequency distribution columns got over now. And now let's move on to scatter plots. So here let's erase pass, and now let's create a new select box for it too. So choose equals st dot select box, and in which I will again ask the user to choose whatever plot you wanna view. So I will paste it over here, and I will plot 3 different scatter plots, and each plot will be by using 3 different packages, namely the Plotly, Seaborn and Matplotlib. So the first plot I'm going to plot is based on my age versus the resting blood pressure. Pressure. And the next one would be my age versus the cholesterol, and the third one would be my cholesterol versus the maximum heart rate achieved. And now let's create an if statement. So if choose equals the age versus the resting blood pressure, and in this case I will plot a scatter plot with the help of Seaborn now. So again we have to create 2 new variables like this. So let's say h comma ax, and with which plt dot subplots, and let's change the figure size to figure size equals, let's change to 10,8, and x equals sns dot scatter plot, and in which my x would be the column age and the y would be my resting blood pressure. So resting underscore blood underscore pressure, and they are all coming from my data gt. And let's plot this inside our Streamlit. So st.pyplot, I will pass my variable h. So let's save this, and here we got our cool scatter plot. And now let's plot for age versus cholesterol. So let's use an elif statement. So elif choose equals age versus cholesterol, and now let's take a variable I, and I'm going to plot this based on our plotly. So px dot scatter, which is the function helps us to plot a scatter plot with our plotly, and my value x would be the age, y would be the cholesterol, it is small c, and finally, and this is coming from my data dt. And now I will plot this particular plot inside the Streamlit. So st dot plotly chart, and in which I will pass my variable s. Now let's save this. Oops, it is showing an invalid syntax because it is equals. Now let's save it, and let's rerun this again. And now let's go to our exploratory data analysis section, inside which we go to plots, and inside our plots we are working on age versus cholesterol. Oops, a typo error, it is cholesterol, and let's change it over here. And now let's save it, and here we got our scatter plot. And lastly, let's move to cholesterol versus maximum heart rate achieved. So elif choose equals. I will copy this and paste it over here. And now let's create this plot using our matplotlib. And now let's take a variable named j. So plt dot figure. And now let's use our scatter function. So plt dot scatter, and in which I will take the column cholesterol. So and my y-axis would be of my column the maximum heart rate achieved. So maximum heart rate achieved, and I will plot this inside our Streamlit. So st.py plot, and in which I will plot my variable j. Now let's save it. Oops, it is from our data frame dt, and let's save this. And here we got our scatter plot. And now let's move on to our outlier detection part. So now let's erase this pass and let's create a select box. So till here it will be same. Let's copy this and paste it over here. And now let's give them some options. So in order to create a box plot, here we are gonna create 5 different box plots for 5 columns, and we will also use all the 3 packages, namely the plotly, seaborn and matplotlib. So let's give them the column names as the choice. So firstly I will give them age and the resting blood pressure, the cholesterol. So cholesterol, and let's bring it down, and I will give them the maximum heart rate achieved. So maximum heart rate achieved, and lastly I will give them the option for depression, so that is the st depression. And now let's create an if statement. So if the choice, I mean the here our variable is choose, is equals to the age, then let's plot a plotly chart. So here we used the character till j, so let's use k now. Px dot box is the function which helps us to create a box plot, and I will call the data frame dt, and in which my column would be the age. And let's print this particular plot inside our Streamlit. So st.plotly chart, and inside which I will pass the variable k. Now let's save it and let's go to our web app. Let's click on rerun, and here we got our box plot. And now let's move to the next one, that is the resting blood pressure. So elif choose equals my resting blood pressure, and in that case let's plot a plot with the help of our seaborn now. So let's take a variable L, and in which plt dot figure, and now sns dot box plot, and inside which I will call my data frame dt, and in which I will pass the resting blood pressure column. And now st dot py plot, and inside which I will pass my variable L. Let's save this and let's click on always rerun, and here we got our outlier detection plot. And let's move on to the cholesterol part. So here let's type in a elif statement where choose equals cholesterol, where let's take a variable name yum, and inside which plt dot figure, and I will use matplotlib now. So plt dot box plot, and inside which I will pass my column name cholesterol, and let's save this, and let's display our plot. So st.pyplot, and inside which I will pass the variable m. And here we got our cool box plot with the help of, we did this with the help of our matplotlib. And let's move on to the maximum heart rate achieved, and we will do this with the help of our plotly. So elif choose equals maximum heart rate achieved. So let's copy this and paste it over here, and let's take a variable n, and in which px dot box, where I will call the data frame dt first, and my x would be the maximum heart rate achieved, and st dot py plotly chart, and inside I will pass my variable m. Now let's save it, and over here we got our outlier detection plot, where we have an outlier that is whose value is 71. And lastly, let's move on to st depression, where we will create that using our c1. So let's use else now. Else o equals plt dot figure and sns dot box plot, and inside which I will call my data frame dt and the column st underscore depression, and I will particularly display this plot inside our Streamlit. So st.pyplot, where I will pass my variable o. Now let's save it, and here we got our outlier detection plot for st depression. And now the part for our outlier detection has been completed successfully, and now let's move on to heat maps and pair plots. So now let's erase this pass, and let's give the choice for our user. So again, let's copy this whole part and paste it over here, and let's give them some options. So here I'm going to give them two options, namely the heat map or either the pair plot. And now let's type in the if statement. If choose equals what to say on the first option, which is heat map, and in that case I will plot a heat map with help of our plotly. And now let's create the correlation. So let's take a variable cor, and inside which I will take my data frame df dot correlation function, that is corr, and in which let's take a variable p, and I will use the imShow function with the help plotly, and in which I will pass the variable cor. And now st.plotly chart, and in which let's display this particular chart named the p, and let's save it. And here we got our cool correlation plot. And lastly, let's create a pair plot. So else we will create the pair plot with the help of our cbond itself. So let's take a variable named the q, so in which plt dot figure, we can increase the size if it looks very small later, and sns dot pair plot, and in which I will pass my data frame, let's pass dt, and st dot pyplot, where I will pass the variable q. Let's save it, and let's move on to our pair plot section. It takes some time. As the pair plot is really a huge figure, the plot is not visible inside our Streamlit web app. So let's display its image. So from PIL, let's import the image module from it. And now let's take a variable img, and in which image dot open, I will open the file named the pairplot.jpeg, and in which I will display this particular image. So st.image and I will pass img. Let's save this, and here we got our pair plot. But when we directly come over here inside our plots page, it doesn't really look attractive because directly we are looking into these 5 basic beta expanders. So let's add some text and image. And now here I am where I have styled our plots page, where I have added this cool image and I have given some information about all the plots that we have plotted. So they are the count plots, bar plots, pie chart, KD plots, scatter plots, box plot, heat maps, and pair plots. And now here are our beta expanders. So let me show you the code now. So here, as this is our plot section, after my else part, I have added this image. So these two codes is for this particular image where I have added this plots.jpeg file and I have written some information over here. And then we have written this particular piece of code already where we have plotted all our plots with the help of Plotly, Seaborn and Matplotlib.